Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to If Naruto had the Two Tails Part 3. Last time on the What If, Team 7 learned to walk on vertical surfaces, and a couple days later, Team 7 finished the Land of Waves mission, after fighting Zabuza and Haku. And during the final fight, Naruto released a bit of the Two Tails' chakra, which made him transform, making him gain blue fire hair and different colored eyes. And a week later, the Chunin exams began, with Team 7 and many other getting passing the first phase of the exams. Okay, so now that's out of the way, let's jump into the video in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we begin this what if a couple of seconds after the main examiner announced that they all passed, and before the Genin could celebrate, a window in the room broke, spreading glass everywhere. And when the Genin heard this, they all turned their heads. And when they did, they saw a woman who told them that she was their next main examiner, and she told them that the next phase will take place in the Forest of Death the next day. And when she was done giving them information, she jumped out of the already broken window. So now we skip to the next day, and when Anko believed that all the examiners were there, she began to explain the rules of the Forest of Death. And while Anko was explaining the rules, Naruto mocked her, and in response, she threw a kunai at his face, which Naruto tried to dodge, and he was able to avoid it mostly with him now having a cut across his cheek. And when Anko was done explaining the rules for the second phase, she and the other examiners gave one of two scrolls to each squad. And when they were ready, Team 7 was released into the forest. And after around half an hour, Naruto needed to go pee, so he split off from the group. And a couple minutes later, Naruto came back to the group. But the moment Sasuke saw Naruto, he threw a kunai at him, which Naruto was able to avoid just in time. And seeing this, Sakura asks why did Sasuke do this, and in response, Sasuke tells her that this isn't the real Naruto, since this Naruto doesn't have a cut on his cheek. And seeing that he was revealed, the Naruto then laughed, and he got surrounded by smoke. And when the smoke was gone, Naruto's identity was revealed, revealing it to be an enemy shinobi from the Hidden Rain. Then the two began to fight, with Sasuke having the upper hand since he had the Sharingan to help him. And after a couple of minutes, the real Naruto showed up, and when he did, he saw Sasuke fighting, and when he saw Sasuke fighting, he made 3 shadow clones that go to help. But when the rain shinobi saw the Narutos, he made a group of clones, which surrounded him. And while the group was trying to attack the clones who were avoiding all their attacks, the real rain shinobi sunk into the ground. And when he was deep enough to be hidden, he undid all the clones before anyone could figure out what the real truth was behind the clones. And when Team 7 thought that they were gone, they tried to scout the area to find the real one, but after a couple of minutes they gave up. And when they did, they came up with a long password so that they would be able to easily identify who was the real ones. But right after they came up with the code, a strong gust of wind appeared which blew the 3 away, with Naruto going the farthest with the 2 still separated, but somewhat close. And after a couple of minutes, Sasuke and Sakura were able to find each other. And when they did, Sasuke pointed a kunai at Sakura, and he then asked for the password. And she responded by giving the password correctly. And when she said the code, Sasuke put down his kunai, and the two then tried to come up with a plan for when Naruto came back. And a couple minutes later, Naruto jumps down from a tree branch. And when Sasuke saw him, he pointed a kunai at him, and he asked for the password. And in response, Naruto gave the password without any problems. And seeing this, Sasuke threw a kunai at him. And in response, Naruto jumped out of the way of the attack. Then the Naruto asked how did Sasuke know that he was a fake. And in response, Sasuke told him that Naruto would be too stupid to remember the code, so he must have been a fake. And seeing that he was revealed, the Naruto got engulfed in smoke. And when the smoke was gone, the Naruto's identity was revealed, revealing it to be a shinobi from the hidden grass. So now we jump to the real Naruto. And when he landed, he was dazed from the sudden gust of wind. And before he was able to react, he gets swallowed by a giant snake. And by the time he was able to find out what was going on, he was being digested. And seeing this, Naruto began to shoot out Mai's hairballs, which began to burn the snake, but it was not enough to do anything. So Naruto then made around 5 clones, which all fired out Mai's hairballs at the same area. And after a minute of barraging Mai's hairballs, they burned the snake enough to make a hole. And when the hole was big enough, the Narutos crawled out. And before the snake could do anything after they got out, they shot out Mai's hairballs in the snake's eyes, blinding it. Then after that was done, Naruto undid the clones, and he began to run as fast as he could back to the 2. So now we jump back to Sasuke and Sakura. And after some fighting, Schwar put his hand up, which made Sasuke stop. And when he did, Schwar pulled out a scroll from his bag, and he then put it into his mouth. And before Sasuke could question what he was doing, Schwar swallowed the scroll whole, which confused both Sasuke and Sakura. Then Schwar told them that the only way for them to get the scroll was by killing him, and vice versa. Then Schwar showed them a vision of them both dying, via a kunai to the head. And when the vision ended, the two were paralyzed with fear. And after a couple of minutes, Schwar pulled out 2 kunais and he threw them at the 2 Gennin's heads. And seeing this, Sasuke pulled out a kunai from his bag and he stabbed himself in the leg. And with this, he was able to focus solely on the pain, and with that, he was able to move again. And before the kunais could hit them, Sasuke pushed him and Sakura out of the way. And when the kunais hit a nearby tree, Sasuke grabbed Sakura and they began to run away. But after a couple of minutes, Sasuke could tell that no matter what he did, he wouldn't be able to escape. So Sasuke then put Sakura down onto a branch, and he waited. And after a couple of seconds, Schwar appeared from the shadows of a tree, and he was riding on top of a giant snake. And when Sasuke and Schwar were face to face, Sasuke pulled out the scroll he had, and he began to try to make a deal with Schwar, which was if they give him their scroll, he will have to leave them alone. But before he was able to finish his proposal, Naruto finally got back to the group. And when he got close enough, he was able to hear Sasuke almost giving away their scroll. And when Sasuke was done saying his deal, they heard yelling from the trees above. And when they turned their heads to see where the sound came from, from, they saw Naruto, who was shouting, asking why Sasuke had given up so easily. And when he was done with his rant, Naruto jumped from the branch he was standing on, and he landed in front of Sasuke. And when he landed, he grabbed the scroll that Sasuke was holding, and he put it into his bag. And when he was secured, he ran at the snake, and he began to fight using fire jutsus. But even though it worked on the past snake, it didn't work on this snake, because of the help of Schwar. And after some time, Naruto got stuck inside the jaws of the snake, about to get eaten again. But while he was stuck, Naruto decided that he needed to go all out, so he began to draw out some of the two tails' chakra. And after a couple of seconds, Naruto began to change, with his hair becoming blue flames, and his eyes changing colors. And with his new strength, Naruto pushed the snake's snout up, which flung the top of the snake's mouth up. And using the time he just got, he jumped out of the snake's mouth. And when he landed, he made around 5 clones, which then began to barrage the snake with mice hairballs, burning the snake. But seeing this, the snake began to attack the Naruto clones. And when it destroyed around 3 clones, the 2 remaining Narutos leapt at the snake, and they began to punch it, with each couple of punches launching the snake down a layer in the trees. But while they were hitting the snake, Schwar was able to throw a kunai at the Naruto clone, destroying it. And seeing this, Naruto stopped. And when he stopped, the snake finally landed without immediately going down another layer. And when it opened its eyes, it was eye level to Sasuke. And seeing Sasuke, it went to bite him. But before the snake could bite him, Naruto appeared in front of Sasuke, and he held back the snake using the power of the two tails. Then after Naruto was able to move the snake away from Sasuke, the two began to fight each other again. But after some time, Naruto began to feel a drawback from using the two tails' chakra, so he began to change back slowly, making him grow weaker every second. And using this to the snake's advantage, the snake was able to wrap around Naruto in a way he couldn't move. And when Naruto was secured, the snake brought Naruto closer and closer to Schwar, and when it gets in arm's length, Schwar puts another seal on Naruto, which locks away the two tails' chakra. And in the process of getting the two tails locked away, Naruto was knocked out. And seeing no more use for Naruto, Schwar tossed Naruto away, which made Naruto begin to fall from a height that would have killed him. But before he fell too far, Sakura threw a kunai which caught into his clothing, sticking him to a nearby tree. Then Sakura shouted at Sasuke to do something, since he hasn't done anything except watch since the fight began. And after some talking, Sasuke got filled with determination and he began to fight Schwar. And after some time, he used a dragon fire technique, which hit Schwar head on, and that made Sasuke believe that he had incinerated him. But when the smoke was gone, Sasuke and Sakura saw Schwar standing tall, as if nothing happened. But when they were able to see him clearly, they see Schwar's face almost completely melted off. But where Schwar's face was melted the most, it revealed another face, revealing it to be Orochimaru. And seeing as he must go now, Orochimaru extends his neck, and he bites Sasuke on the shoulder. And when Orochimaru lets go, the place he bit now has a weird mark, so Sasuke now has the curse mark. Then Orochimaru goes to leave, but right before he left, he wishes Sasuke luck. Then in a blink of an eye, Orochimaru disappears, and when he was gone, Sasuke passed out, since when he gained the curse mark, it drained a lot of his chakra, and that left Sakura to go pick up both of her unconscious teammates. And after some time, Sakura was able to find a place to hide herself and her teammates, and when they were secured, she placed traps around the area they were hiding in. And after she was done placing the traps, she healed them up the best she could. But after some time, Team Dosu appear, and when they noticed Sakura, they broke through all the traps she placed with ease. And when they were face to face, they challenged Sasuke to a fight. But since Sasuke was currently knocked out, it wasn't possible. So they then go to attack Sakura. But before any of their attacks could hit, Lee appeared from a bush, and he began to fight them. And after a couple of minutes of fighting, Lee tried to use the front lotus, but when he landed the attack, it wasn't as strong as he wanted, and the drawback from the attack was too much for him. So when he landed, he was unable to move for a period of time afterward. And taking advantage of this, Team Dosu attacks Lee until he gets knocked out. And when he was knocked out, they go to attack Sakura again. And after a bit of fighting, Sakura gets defeated, and she gets her hair grabbed by Kin, who starts to insult her, telling her she's weak. And seeing this as her only way out, Sakura grabbed a kunai from her bag and she cut the hair Kin was holding, allowing her to be free. And the first thing she did after being free was attack Zaku, and after slashing him a couple of times with her kunai, she pins him to the ground. But after some time, Zaku was able to overpower her, and when he did, he beat up Sakura until she was bleeding from her head. But before he could hit her again, Team 10 appears to help Sakura, and they start to attack Team Dosu. And after some time, Team Guy appears, and they help since they want to help their unconscious teammate. But before the team of teams could beat Team Dosu, Sasuke woke up with an ominous aura around him. And when Sasuke got up, Sakura was able to get a good look at him. And when she did, she saw that there was now black markings spread across half of his body. And when Sasuke was standing, he began to look around, and eventually he comes across Sakura, who was injured from the fight. So he then asked who did this, and in response, Zaku raised one of his arms. And when Sasuke saw this, he began to attack Zaku. And when he was behind him, he began to pull on his arms, and he was going to originally rip them off completely. But after some begging and pleading from Sakura, he just dislocated them. And when he was done with that, he turned his attention to Dosu. But before he was able to get to him, Sakura pleaded for Sasuke to stop. And after some time, the curse mark started to shrink, making Sasuke fall to the ground. And seeing this, Dosu quickly picked up his two teammates and he began to run away. And after some time, all the teams left, besides Team 7. And a couple hours later, Naruto finally woke up, not knowing about what happened when he was knocked out, thus not knowing about the curse mark. Okay, so now we skip a couple of days, and while Sasuke was looking for food, food, Naruto and Sakura were discussing foraging the second scroll, since that whole day they were having trouble looking for teams with the opposite scroll, and after some time they decided to cheat. But in order to do that, they needed to open the scroll. So Naruto then began to unravel the scroll, but before he was able to get the ink, Kabuto appeared and he shouted for the two to stop, and he told them that there were consequences from doing that. And after he said that, he showed the two of them a team that opened their scroll, and the whole team was knocked out, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't wake them up. And after they were done looking for the team, the three walked back to Team 7's camp, and when they got there, Sasuke got back from foraging for food, who then began to ask why there was now another person at their camp. Then the two walked over to Sasuke and they began to explain the situation, and he told him what Kabuto told them, and they began to have a discussion about whether they should trust him or not. And after a couple of minutes, they decided it was okay for him to join them. So they then came up with a plan to get their second scroll during the night, since they could just steal it from an enemy team while they were asleep. So now we skip to that night, and when everything was prepared, they ran around the forest trying to find a team with the other scroll. But after around half an hour, they felt like they weren't going anywhere, and that they were just going in one giant circle multiple times. And when they figured this out, they stopped, and they tried to find a way out. But while they were talking, a group of clones of the person Sasuke fought at the beginning of the Forest of Death came out of the ground. And after some fighting, Team 7 and Kabuto figured out that the clones were not physical. So Naruto then made around 50 clones with 3 of them turning into Sasuke, Sakura, and Kabuto. And when the clones were fully formed, they began to fight the other clones. And while the clones were fighting, the originals hid under a tree. And after a couple of hours, the enemy team assumed that Team 7 was tired, so they came out of their hiding spot. And when they did, Naruto undid all the clones, and the originals came out of their hiding spot. So the two groups then started to fight. But during the fight, Naruto tried to cover himself with the two tails of chakra. But when he tried, to Naruto and Matatabi's surprise, nothing happened. And during the fight, Sasuke tried to use the fireball jutsu, but when he tried to mold his chakra, he felt a pain throughout his entire body. But even with these two weakened, after around 10 minutes, Team 7 and Kabuto were able to win, and they were able to take the enemy team's scroll, which now means that they just have to get to the central tower. And after a couple minutes of running, they finally get there. And when they do, they split off from Kabuto since his team was waiting there for him. And when they entered the tower, they were told to open both of the scrolls at the same time in the next room over. And when they do, a smoke came out of the two scrolls. And when the smoke cleared, they see Iruka, who then congratulates them for making it so far. And after some talking, he tells them to go to the next room. And when they walk into the room, they see Team 10, 8, Guy, Dosu, and 2 of the 3 Saiyan Shinobi asleep. And the one that's awake is the one with red hair and black circles around his eyes. And this is where we're going to leave the What If. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.